We've been doing this podcast for 2.5 years now, and the most listened to episodes are always the ones talking about career and certifications in Treasury. So we decided to partner up with the AFP, the Association for Financial Professionals, so we can offer you a $100 discount code on all of the AFP's products. This includes, of course, the CTP, the Certified Treasury Professional, which is hands down the most renowned and recognized certification in Treasury out there. And of course, the access to the CTP exam prep platform as well. Check the link in the description to access to those discount codes and take your career to the next level.
There's no one group that's able to solve every single problem. It's really incumbent upon the treasurer to understand. Treasury in general is moving from less operational to more strategic. Where I would see that going is really having a very strong investment in technology.
So do you think that it's the treasurer that needs to become the technologists themselves?
Most transformation, particularly in the financial services space, is through technology.
Day-to-day tasks or processes where we see just improvement to treasury processes from technology?
Even things like putting together a payment and executing a payment. There's many technology solutions that enable that to be automated, including the approval process.
Do you have any final insights or advice for treasurers looking to embrace technology and drive innovation in their department?
My parting words are,
Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the Corporate Treasury 101 podcast. It's always amazing to have someone of your caliber on the show. And great to have you.
Thanks so much, Ali, for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So can you just start off by sharing your vision of the future of Treasury, especially in the context of 2024 and now coming 2025? Where do you see Treasury going in general?
Yeah, I think Treasury in general is moving from less operational to more strategic. It sounds easier than it actually is, right? Because if you're a treasurer, you are working across the globe, you're working probably with multiple banking partners, you're working with multiple different technology systems, and a lot of that today is manually pulled together. And so how do you do that in an automated fashion to be able to free up your time to think strategically and help be a strategic advisor to the CFO, to the management team, and to the board, et cetera. And so where I would see that going is really having a very strong investment in technology inside of the treasurer's suite. So that could be artificial intelligence. It could be a lot of other things. Certainly banking partners play a key role on that, but automating more tasks and automating what I would call simple decision-making through different rule sets, and then really allowing through much more advanced, AI and other technology, more scenario modeling, and really looking at other broad risk management scenarios, which is a really important part of the treasurer's job every day.
Makes a lot of sense. So do you think that it's the treasurer that needs to become the technologists themselves? Should treasurers be picking up Python skills or ChatGPT prompting classes, or is that something that they need to have a certain level of? To what degree do treasurers need to become technologists, in your opinion, in that?
I think treasurers need to be technology savvy, because the way that you enable most transformation, particularly in the financial services space, is through technology. And there's all different types of technologies that support treasurers today. Of course, there's the ERP systems that we all know. There's the treasury management systems that we all know that do that. But there's so many other evolving technologies that are existing today to help automation. And we mentioned a little bit around AI and some other machine language and other types of technology systems. So it's really important for the treasurer to understand what's out there in the market. So whether that's talking to their banking partners, going to conferences, reading up on the latest industry trends. And so it's A, having that understanding, and then B, knowing how to deploy it inside of the organization, because oftentimes, treasurers don't have unlimited, like the rest of us, unlimited technology budgets. And so it's really understanding, if you understand your existing technology ecosystem, you're going to be very well positioned to understand how you can improve it and then have certain add-ons along the way to really take you to the next level from a treasurer perspective. I mean, sure, it can't hurt to understand how to code a little bit of Python, I think, every now and then, but certainly not going to be required, in my view, as a role for a treasurer. But I think understanding the power of something like a Python, I think, is really important.
Makes a lot of sense. I can imagine like understanding the basics of like programming isn't just like about understanding like how to write code, but it's also like understanding how code thinks and how code works. Because I think that enables you to understand what is possible through automation. Like
Well,
I'm not a great
and you're
Go ahead.
exactly right. I mean, one of the biggest skills when you look at data scientists today, in addition to technologists, is how do you ask the right questions, right? You have to know the art of the possible. And, I've used Python myself on a number of different analyses. And, starting out, I didn't fully appreciate the power of what it could answer for me in terms of scale and how quickly it can answer for me. So as you spend more time in it and spending time, that's why I think spending time with data scientists are really important because they can really help, push your thinking, help you think big and help you think very strategically. Because if you know the power of those tools, then it really helps you with very large strategic questions.
And that's where I think the partners you have around you is really important, right? Whether that's inside your treasury team, so like having data analysts inside your treasury team, for example, but also like the banking partners you work with, which I'm sure we'll dive a bit further into, or even like the other technology partners like the TMS that you're working with, how much of these advancements are they bringing? So do you think that not just the treasury departments, but also the partners around it need to be leveling up and or treasury needs to be finding better partners to help them with this?
I think it's both because if you look at all of those treasury, those technology partners you mentioned, that treasury management systems, ERP, banking partners, and then, you have data scientists on your team, et cetera, there's no one group that's able to solve every single problem that, or, strategy or, the objective that the treasurer has. No one group is going to be able to solve all of those things. And so it's really incumbent upon the treasurer to understand how all those things are going to work together and where are the gaps. So to your question on treasurer as a technologist, that's one of the most important things is understanding what are the solutions that the ERP providers can bring. How does that work with the treasury management providers? And then what are the gaps that your banking partners can fill or that other partners in the organizations can fill? Because no one set of technology is going to do all of those things. And so banking partners in particular, as you mentioned, are really thinking about this problem statement. And E&Y in particular, we spend a lot of time thinking about it because our clients don't have, and again, most, companies around the globe, whether you're fintech or corporate or a bank, you don't have limitless technology budgets. And this is an expensive industry in which to operate, right? I mean, payments, and there's a lot of payment formatting standards. We have ISO, 222 coming out. There's a lot of, always, there's hundreds of payment systems around the world. So how do you bring all of those together in a way that is easy to use, streamlined, digitized? And that's really where banks can play an important role. And at BNY, what we think about is how do we take that technology burden off of our clients and put it onto us? And so we develop single API interfaces or single, payment pipes, if you will, with our clients. And then we maintain in the background all of the technology upgrades and all of the other payment formatting standards that change on, almost a daily basis around the world. And so, yes, all of those partners, I think, have to step up to really help the treasurer enable change, enable innovation, digitize, and really keep pace with what's happening in the industry.
Super cool. Do you have examples of like day-to-day tasks or processes that treasurers should be like looking at as low-hanging fruit almost, that they should be saying that this is where like we see the fastest like just improvement to treasury processes from technology?
There's a couple of them, and of course, every organization is set up differently, but even things like simple payment, putting together a payment and executing a payment today can be quite manual for many companies. And there's many technology solutions that enable that to be automated, including the approval process, which is obviously a very important part of that process. So I would say, the payment generation, receivables reconciliation continues to often be a very manual process. And, it really is, interesting in this industry how many payments that our clients and, the industry at large receives that they actually don't know what specifically how to apply that, right? If you have a client who's paying you for 65 invoices but makes you one lump sum payment, you may not know how to reconcile that back within your AR system. And so technology can really help with receivables reconciliation. And then you have cash flow forecasting question, which, as long as I've been in this industry, which is a couple dozen years, has always been a challenge because of the multiple banking partners across the world that most corporates and banks and non-bank financial institutions use, especially those that have, hundreds of accounts globally. It's how do you get more automation in that process? And certainly treasury management systems and ERP systems do have some of those capabilities, but this is where you have like your data scientists and your AI skill sets to be able to really help you take that to the next level and really bring not just the automation of the process, but more insight and automation of the insight and having you see more forward-looking beyond the current cash flow forecasting.
So, I mean, I get you. I mean, like cash flow forecasting is typically the first thing that people go towards. But I think the opportunities that we've also seen that seem way more exciting is, well, exciting in that they get rid of the boring stuff. The cash flow forecasting can still be a bit of a problem. It's kind of fun to solve. I guess if you've done enough times, it becomes very boring. But things like manual payments, like you said there, like these kind of like administrative tasks that are really interesting. Also, there's a lot of work in like structuring data that comes in as well, which seems to be really, really interesting also. I mean, there's just so many places where this can go, which is going to help revolutionize in general.
And that's absolutely right. And back to the treasurer's technologist, we don't even talk about data because the organization has to have a data strategy, right? So whether that's a data lake and whatever that is across the company, because the treasurer needs, ideally the treasurer would have real-time information about every single receivable, payable, the balance of every single account, foreign exchange, et cetera. But oftentimes companies themselves don't have real-time data. And so that's where the treasurer can be a really important partner to like the chief data officer to help him or her really understand how the power of that and partner together to get real-time information.
Super interesting. So Jennifer, one of the main pain points that we hear from treasurers is that they have all these great ideas. There's all this automation. They have all these manual tasks that they can automate and they can bring, their treasury function to the next level. But making a compelling case to the CFO or to the business to secure funding for all of this is typically like the roadblock, right? And one of the most common things that we get into is like, well, how can treasurers make a compelling case to the business? And typically that's around business growth, right? So like where can we either impact the top line or the bottom line, right? To be able to use the treasury function in a more strategic facing role as opposed to as a administrative function, right? To just kind of know where the money is. So how does all this help the overall business? And how can like treasurers structure that to like make a compelling case to be able to get time and resources to be able to do this?
You're absolutely right. I mean, the treasurer, if you think about what the treasurer does every day, they manage the money flowing through the ecosystem of the company, right? Receivables, payables, payroll, et cetera. And, that is the core to the company. That's the lifeblood of any company, right? It's the liquidity flowing through it and then having all of the liquidity obligations to make not only their commitments, but think about strategic, whether that's PP&E, purchases or acquisitions or whatever, research and development, you want to have some funds for that. And so the treasurer plays an absolutely critical role in helping the CFO and the broader management team understand what are those options and what are those trade-offs in terms of, because there's obviously a lot of ways you can access money, right? There's the balances you hold as a company, there's debt, there's a lot of other ways that, you can access that. And so the treasurer's role is it's critical in that process to help the broader team understand that. And having the treasurer be part of those broader strategic planning conversations is key because what you don't want is a company wants to go make an acquisition and then, the treasurer gets the phone call and the treasurer like, oh, like it's going to take me a couple of days or whatever it is to come up with that funding. And so that's why, involving the treasurer in those big strategic planning processes is important. And then we haven't even talked too much about the risk management piece, which is there's a lot around fraud control that the treasurer does for the company, FX exposure and other types of risk management that is really, really critical to not only the financial management of the company, but some of the operating risk management of the company. So how does the treasurer articulate all of that? We actually help our clients with that. And treasurers have, a lot of different OKRs or KPIs or whatever term we want to use in terms of how treasurers are measured. It could be things as simple as reducing bank fees. It could be generating revenue. It could be reducing risk. And so in helping the treasurer think through that and really making the business case, that is very, very powerful in helping the board really understand, if you give the treasurer X amount of investment, or if you want to bring in, a banking partner like BNY, what is it going to cost? But what are the advantages, not only from a financial perspective, but advantages around technology, risk management, fraud control. And so that's what a lot of what we do is we partner with our clients to help them.
Super interesting. So risk management, I can understand, is a really, really important thing. But also, I mean, in the current climate of interest rates, which is almost like normal now. I remember we were doing podcast episodes a year ago, and all we were talking about was like, oh, treasurers, like this is their time to step up. Like the interest rates have all of a sudden spiked and everything. Now it's like, this is just life, right? Like with such interest rates, this is just the norm now. So I think everyone's gotten a little bit more used to it. But it's, I think, imperative to remember a time when money was free, right? And that was where maybe Treasury wasn't as business critical. Whereas I think now, like having to make that last minute acquisition, when if you knew maybe a year ago when talks started, or 2 years ago when talks started, maybe you could have started, working out, okay, where do I actually store my money to get the best return on it? Or where can I leverage debt at much cheaper rates when they come to me, or opportunities come to me, to be able to forecast for that, right? And all that becomes a lot more interesting.
And there's no simple answer to that question because, of course, US dollar rates have been high, but a lot of corporations and banks operate globally, right? And not only do you have to manage that risk within, we're talking about the US Fed funds rate, but around the world. A lot of our clients operate in 20, 30 countries, and every one of them has a much different interest rate situation, of course. And so how do you balance all of those risks together? And then not every currency in which you operate is fungible, like meaning you can't always get it out exactly at the time that you want it. And so you have that on top of it too. So not only is it the interest rate, but it's where your balance is deployed and how quickly can you access that.
And all this comes back to the treasurer being a strategic partner, right? And so it all contributes towards a treasurer being like part of not just enabling business strategy, but even dictating it at times as well. Do you feel that's true?
Absolutely right, because the treasurer is going to see economic trends and other opportunities in markets. The treasurer is close to interest rate development and other types of risk management. And because the treasurer is close to those things, that's very important guidance for the management team to understand and to take into account. You're right. It's not just working on an acquisition. It's the overall strategic planning for the company, but it's also the daily operating of the company. The treasurer is on the front line of a lot of these issues globally, as you mentioned, liquidity risk, financial risk, fraud risk, operating risk, and other types of risk management. So the treasurer's voice is a very powerful one.
So Jennifer, as we go through this, you've already mentioned a little bit about how BNY supports treasurers in becoming a lot more technically savvy, right? And also integrate these technologies into their treasury processes by what you mentioned earlier was that how you guys take the technological load onto your site as much as possible and offer simple interfaces for the treasurer. Take us through like what I would call a best-in-class banking partner from a technology point of view at the very least, like BNY, works with a treasurer in their journey to become more technologically adept?
Sure. Well, the first thing that we need to do as a banking partner is understand exactly what the goals and objectives of the treasurer are. And, some of them are very common across the industry, but obviously, every bank and corporation and fintech has unique goals and objectives. So the most important thing is first understanding that. And then at the end of the day, our job is to help make the treasurer successful and achieve their goals. So understanding that is foundational. Second is understanding what the current technology environment in which the treasurer operates is also very important. At the end of the day, banks are technology companies. And so the ability to integrate into the ERP system, the treasury management system, a homegrown system, Excel, whatever that is critically important. And that's often where the largest expenses when you think about doing a project with a banking partner, it's the technology integration that can often be the biggest question or the biggest source of potential technology budget. But what our philosophy at BNY is we try to take as much of that burden off of our clients as possible. And we do that a couple of different ways. And I think banking partners, it's really important for banking partners to think about that. So, there are a variety of ways that we seamlessly integrate with different types of ERP systems, for treasury management systems, for things like payments and reporting, and a lot of those, what I would call like day-to-day, really important tasks that the treasurer does. But also what we have to help the treasurer think through is, how are you going to maintain that technology infrastructure? We've talked a little bit about ISO 222. There's hundreds of clearing systems around the world. There's 90-ish real-time payment systems. All of them are constantly going through an upgrade, right? As they should. We want to keep things safe and efficient. And so where does that technology burden lie? And that technology burden, we believe at BNY, should fall with us, not our clients. And so it's really how you integrate, and not only with the ERPs and the treasury management, but with your client to be able to do that. And so we offer a variety of ways to do that. And APIs are very easy to integrate. They're seamless. It's a single connection point, and we maintain all of the technical complexity behind the scenes. But not all banks and companies around the world actually have APIs. And so we offer a variety of different ways to be able to do that, through traditional file transfer or just direct technical connectivity. But again, the theme is the same, which is we bring all of the global complexity to our clients around the world through a single or a limited set of connections, so that really the treasurer doesn't have to every year go back and ask for a large technology budget to maintain. It also frees up the treasurer to focus on, as we talked about, a lot more of the important strategic tasks.
Super interesting. So can you talk about the different payment rails that encompass that? Are you guys giving access to all the immediate payments and real-time payment systems, or like how does that, or do you just take the burden of selecting the one that fits the goal the best?
So let's talk about that. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Let's talk about that for a minute. So we offer all of the payment rails, obviously here in the US, high value, low value, real-time payments, et cetera, as well as FedNow. And let's just maybe spend a little bit of time on the immediate payment environment in the US, because that will help answer your question. So FedNow was launched last year, and we did a lot of work with them to, and we were one of the partners who helped FedNow to scale, and we continue to really talk with a lot of our clients about it. And in 2017, the real-time payments network was launched. So the US has 2 instant payment networks that are not today interoperable. And today we have about 900 banks enrolled collectively across both of those systems. And about 70% of the bank accounts in the US are enabled to receive an instant payment across one of those 2 rails. And the reason that that's important is because when we developed these solutions, we thought a lot about, okay, so a client could send, if I'm going to send you a payment, I wouldn't know if your receiving bank is enabled on real-time payments or on FedNow or on same-day ACH or to receive a Fed wire. And so what we do is this concept of smart routing. And so again, not only do we take the technology burden off of our clients, we take the burden off of deciding which payment rail to use. Because in the olden days, so to speak, of banking, you would send a wire you send a file for ACH, a file for wires. That is no longer necessary because we have smart routing capabilities that actually can read the payment information, everything from the IBAN, the account number, the routing number, and actually look up the most efficient way to settle that payment. So in the example of FedNow in real-time payments, our clients don't need to worry about which bank is receiving which type, because we actually automatically route that for them. And if they wanted to send an instant payment and for whatever reason the receiving bank wasn't live on either one of the instant payment systems, we would send it through via same-day ACH. So we've taken all of that, what I would call routing complexity behind the scenes, and brought it forward through this concept of smart routing.
Very interesting. And there's also something really interesting you guys are doing at BNY around variable costs versus fixed costs. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
This is a very big trend in the industry. And so really what we see less of is clients buying, big multi-million-dollar technology pieces to integrate into their systems. And instead they're looking for much more variable cost infrastructure. And with things like cloud and other technologies, this has become a much more feasible and common way to look at it. And so this can be solved a number of different ways. It can be solved through white labeling, right? So we have a number of clients outside of the US who want to do business in the US, but really They don't want to use their capital to build all of the, the millions of dollars of the payment infrastructure here inside of the US to be able to operate and serve their clients. Well, that's where BNY comes in. We have all of that infrastructure in place. And so we provide that to our clients so that they can service their clients in the US without having to build all of that expensive technology infrastructure and also be an expert on all of the nuances of the US market. And so that is, we price that through variable, meaning, for every payment you send through, you pay for payment. We don't charge, big integration fees to integrate into that. We are offering our clients access to the market, but on a variable cost basis. So it's really a win-win. Clients are leveraging our scale, our expertise, without having to invest into the environment. And then we're helping them, again, focus on their client base and their strategy without then having to worry about all the new ones. That's one example. And then you see, banking as a service, which is a whole nother big trend in the market where a lot of, be it fintechs or corporations, they're using payments as the payments are a way to monetize their business, or payments are a very, very important part of the consumer experience. And so you think about, refund payments, and you think about the concept of, in the gig economy, like how quickly you can pay those employees. I mean, there's a competitive advantage for employers who can pay, after every shift, every hour, as opposed to the traditional twice a month. And so payments are really a way that companies are using to differentiate and monetize themselves. But again, corporations don't want to, rebuild all of that infrastructure themselves. And so that's when they come to partners like BNY to be able to help them.
And is that the same thing as like the pay-as-you-go system? Is that like another terminology for the variable cost, or are they different things?
So no, it's the same. When we say variable cost, we just mean you're not putting a big technology investment outlay up front and then, hoping that it monetizes over the X amount of years. You're actually avoiding that. You're just connecting into our infrastructure and then you're paying as you go. Yeah, exactly.
Is the white labeling aspect of what you guys are offering at BNY only limited to payments, or also other aspects of a treasury system as well?
We do a lot of different white labeling components for our treasurer clients. It could be payments, it could be around cash concentration structures. A big topic today within treasurers is virtual accounts, right? Because maintaining hundreds of physical accounts is expensive. It introduces a lot of risk, as we've talked about, into the system. So virtual accounts really helps minimize that, but not all of our clients really want to build that infrastructure themselves. So that's an example of something that we can help with our clients with. And then also some liquidity and some investment solutions. We do help our clients white label.
Super interesting. I can imagine from a regulatory point of view, that's a huge hassle saving for the clients, right? Like, especially as you mentioned, like external companies want to come into the US, understanding the landscape, understanding from a regulatory point of view, what they can and can't do and how to navigate that. Seems like a huge win.
Well, right. I mean, you have to, as a company, it's like you can't, companies don't have endless capital, right? To be 100%, to build everything themselves in every single company in which they operate. And, and banks are like this too. Banks don't build infrastructure in every single market in which they operate. They rely on other bank partners like BNY to be help them to navigate that, and which includes, to your point, a lot of the advice on the local market standards and local market practices. And so the good news is you don't have to be an expert in all of those things, but you do need to work with an expert who is an expert.
Absolutely great. Jennifer, before we conclude, do you have any final insights or advice for treasurers looking to embrace technology and drive innovation in their departments? What would be your parting words for treasurers with that mindset?
I would say my parting words are, embrace the change. Change is constant, and if we aren't changing, everybody else around us is. And so, but change doesn't have to be disruptive, right? Change can be incredibly, value added and accretive to what it is that we're doing. And so what we encourage our clients to do and what we ourselves do, we publish a lot of thought leadership pieces. We think it's important to make sure that, the industry, including our clients, are aware of everything that's happening across the latest, fraud management trends or fraud prevention trends, ISO 22, regulatory environment, payment standards, virtual accounts, best practices. We do a lot of corporate advisory with our treasury clients, meaning how do we help them think about what does the treasure of the future look like and how do we help them set that up? And so there's a lot of resources available to treasurers. I mean, whether it's banks and the thought leadership that I mentioned. There's a number of very interesting industry conferences all around the globe that talk about not only treasurers, but other trends in financial services. The other point that I find really valuable and helpful is to stay abreast of all of the new entrants into the market from a fintech perspective. There's a lot of different fintechs that are coming in. Typically, fintechs solve a very small piece of the value chain, but if nothing else, it keeps you abreast of what the key problem statements are in the industry. And so you can be thinking about how to incorporate that into your overall technology shop. But I guess what I would leave treasurers with is you're not on your own. You have banking partners like BNY to help you. That's our job. Our job is to help you. Our job is to help make you successful. And we have, a variety of different technology solutions, thought leaders in the company, and we have a lot of different ways to help our treasurers through that. And, same with ERP and treasury management providers. There's a lot of resources there. So treasurers don't have to go it alone. There's a lot of us here to support them and hear from them.
Absolutely great. If people want to find more about how BNY is doing this and maybe potentially even get in touch to be able to partner on this, where should they go and how should they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. They should go to our website, bny.com. And then folks can also, reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn.
Absolutely amazing. All that will be in the show notes below. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we look forward to having you back on in the future at some point to see how this technology has evolved and the next wave.
Yeah, it's an exciting topic. Absolutely, Ali. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much.